Unaware the wife he slapped was hiding a $400 million fortune, husband forced her to sign divorce papers. What she did later, with the judge's envelope, crushed him. He didn't just raise his voice. He raised his hand. In a quiet home, on an ordinary day, Victor Reed's palm met Elena's cheek with a sharp, humiliating sound that seemed to freeze the air around them. Papers lay scattered on the floor. His eyes were cold. Her world tilted. The next morning, he came back not with an apology, but with a folder. He slammed divorce papers onto the table and called it freedom. He told her she was holding him back. He said she should just sign and disappear. Elena, 32, gentle and calm, sat with the pen shaking between her fingers, while Victor's business partner watched and an officer stood by the door, making sure she cooperated. On his sleeve, she still smelled the perfume that wasn't hers. In his phone, another woman's name kept lighting up. He thought she was weak. He thought she had nothing. He thought forcing her to sign meant he had finally won. What he never knew was this. Long before he slapped her, long before he called her small, Elena's late father had locked away a secret, a $400 million trust in her name, designed to wake up only when she finally chose herself over him. And the real twist? The day Victor walked into court, smirking, expecting a simple hearing, Elena walked in holding a single sealed envelope meant for the judge, an envelope that carried more power than any slap, any insult, any threat he ever used. This is not just a story about a man who went too far. It's about what happens when the woman he thought was powerless decides to quietly stand. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like letting Elena's voice fade back into silence. When you click that button, you stand with every quiet soul who chose dignity over revenge. Please subscribe now and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The first thing Elena remembered was not the slap itself, but the way the room felt afterward. Frozen, tilted, wrong. Later, when she looked back over everything that happened, her mind would always circle around that moment. The sound, the shock. The way Victor looked at her like she was a problem he needed to manage, not a person he had hurt. But to understand that moment, the story has to slow down. It has to pull back and show who she really was before his hand ever rose. Elena Reed, 32, was not a woman people noticed at first glance. She blended into rooms the way warm light blends into morning air. Quiet, steady, never demanding attention. She remembered everything about other people. How Victor preferred smooth cotton shirts because rough fabric irritated his skin. How he hated loud music because it scattered his thoughts. How he needed silence before important meetings and believed the world should rearrange itself around his schedule. Victor, 35, ambitious and proud, rarely remembered anything about her. Not her favorite tea, not the way she liked to read near a window, not that crowded rooms made her anxious. Elena had grown up in a very different world from his. She came from a family that believed wealth should never be a weapon or a spotlight. Her late father, Elias Ward, built a quiet empire, old properties, long-term investments, shares in companies most people never heard about but relied on every day. He taught her that real power was the kind you didn't put on display. If people see your money before they see your character, he would say, you'll attract the wrong kind of love. When Elias died, he didn't just leave money. He left a structure, a private trust, sealed documents, properties in her name that she never claimed publicly. All of it was managed by his older sister, Aunt Miriam Ward, a strict, elegant woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a calm voice. As trustee, Miriam's job was simple and ruthless: protect the Ward fortune and protect Elena. The trust had conditions. Elias had written them himself. The full funds would only become available to Elena if she married for love, and if, when that love failed, she walked away from the marriage without trying to strip her partner's wealth, even if he had wronged her. No greedy divorce, no bargaining for his money, no revenge through assets. Hide your worth, Elias had told her in his study when she was 18, sitting among shelves of old books and heavy wooden furniture. Let the world show you its intentions first. Elena lived by that rule. When Victor proposed years later, she didn't mention the Ward name in finance articles. She didn't talk about the trust. She didn't explain why Aunt Miriam insisted on meeting him only once, briefly, and then quietly stepped back. Victor never asked. He assumed she came from a modest background because she chose to live modestly. He assumed the house, paid off with money she never explained, was simply theirs, Manmo, Narsun, and mostly his doing. He assumed her maiden name, Ward, was just another common surname. He thought she was lucky to be with him. He never wondered if it might be the other way around. Back in the present, after another long evening of raised voices and cold silence, Victor walked out of the living room without looking at her. The argument ended not with resolution, but with him grabbing his keys and slamming the door. Elena stood there for a moment, cheeks still warm, heart still tight. Then she slowly bent down to pick up the scattered mail that had fallen during the commotion. One envelope slid out of the stack, heavy cream-colored paper, embossed with a faint familiar crest. The Ward crest. Her fingertips paused over it. The symbol pulled her back instantly to her childhood home, to her father's study, to conversations about protection and timing. The return address was a quiet law firm that had handled Ward affairs for decades. Routine correspondence, probably. Annual updates, or something else. Before she could open it, her phone buzzed. Her sister, Clara Ward, 29, outspoken, sharp-eyed, fiercely protective, appeared on the screen. Clara had never fully trusted Victor. Elena answered. "Hey." Clara didn't waste time. Your voice sounds off. Did you and Victor argue again?" Elena forced a small smile, though no one could see it. "I'm fine, just cleaning up." Silence stretched between them, thin but heavy. Clara had known her too long to be fooled. "Elena," Clara asked softly, "did you ever tell Victor what Dad prepared for you?" The question hung there. Elias's words echoed in the back of Elena's mind. The sealed trust, the rules, the warning about men who loved money more than hearts. Elena looked toward the door Victor had just slammed. He hadn't come back to check on her. He hadn't asked if she was hurt. Her voice came out quiet, honest. "He married me, Clara. Not my name." Clara sighed softly on the other end. "Just remember, Dad didn't leave you helpless." "I know," Elena whispered. They ended the call. Elena set the Ward crest envelope on the table. She didn't open it. Not yet. From the living room, she heard the front door open again. Victor's voice floated in, louder now, followed by another man's tone. Evan Dre, Victor's business partner, stepped inside. Late 30s, always dressed a little too sharply, always laughing a little too quickly at Victor's jokes. He barely glanced at Elena. "Where's my jacket?" Victor snapped, like she was an employee who misplaced his things. Evan chuckled. "Man, you're always in a rush. Big meeting?" Victor adjusted his cuff. "Just fixing my life," he muttered. Elena turned away so they wouldn't see her expression. As they headed toward the door, their low voices drifted back. "She's too soft. She'll never fight back." They thought they were out of range. They weren't. Elena's face stayed calm. Too calm. Her gaze drifted back to the Ward envelope on the table. Her hand hovered above it, then stopped midway. A quiet breath left her lips as the scene narrowed around her. Soon the world would show its intentions, and when it did, she would have a choice to make. The first small cracks in Victor's behavior are about to appear, and they won't stay small for long. The night started with noise. Heavy footsteps, a slammed door, and Victor's sharp voice cutting through the hallway. "No greeting, no, I'm home. Just tension." Elena looked up from the sofa, startled. Victor was usually controlled, polished, careful about appearances. Even when he was annoyed, he tried to sound composed. Tonight something was off. He smelled of a sweet, expensive perfume she had never worn. One shirt button was misaligned, like he had dressed in a hurry or redressed too quickly. Elena watched him from across the room, her heart beating a little faster. She had known Victor Reed for 5 years, long enough to recognize patterns. He liked structure. He hated mess. He believed chaos was for other people, not him. This version of him, distracted, careless, smelling like someone else, felt wrong. "Long day?" she asked quietly. He didn't meet her eyes. "Don't start with questions," he snapped, walking past her. When he moved, that unfamiliar perfume drifted in the air again. Not faint. Fresh. Victor dropped onto the couch, pulling out his phone. He angled the screen away from her, shoulder turned just enough to block her view. He had never done that before. A hairline crack formed inside Elena, small but real. To fill the silence, she stood and walked toward the kitchen. As she passed behind him, his voice dropped low. Softer, warmer, not meant for her. "Sabrina, I'm home now." Elena froze. The name hit her like cold water, a name she had never heard him say. Not as a client, not as a colleague, not as a friend. She didn't know it yet, but Sabrina Cole was 28, bold and confident, a woman Victor had met months earlier at a business conference, someone who liked being admired, someone who didn't flinch at the idea of taking what belonged to someone else. In this moment, Elena only had the sound of the name. That was enough. Victor stiffened when he realized she was standing behind him. He ended the call too quickly, face tightening. "What are you doing standing there?" he asked. "I thought you said someone's name," Elena replied softly. He forced a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "You're hearing things." It was a lazy lie, the kind of lie a person tells when they're sure the other will swallow it. Elena didn't argue. She simply nodded and walked away. But inside, something shifted. Questions formed in the quiet space between her heartbeat and his lies. Her mind pulled forward an old memory she hadn't thought about in years. 3 years earlier, at a dinner with friends, Victor had spoken with pride about loyalty. He declared dishonesty was the one thing he despised. He said cheating was pathetic. He bragged that he would never betray someone who gave him their all. Back then, Elena believed him entirely. She admired his certainty. Now, remembering that night, the words tasted like smoke in her throat. Later, Victor claimed he needed fresh air and stepped outside with his phone. Another new habit. Minutes after he left, Elena's phone buzzed. A message from her cousin, Marcus Hale, 34, her father's nephew, and someone who had known Victor even before she did. Marcus rarely texted her directly. He usually kept a safe, neutral distance. The message was short. "Elena, if Victor starts coming home late, please call me. I need to tell you something." Her breath caught. Marcus was many things, but dramatic was not one of them. If he said he needed to talk, it meant something was deeply wrong. Elena stared at the screen, thumb hovering, then typed back, "He's already coming home late." The 3 typing dots appeared, then disappeared. No reply arrived. A chill slid down her spine. When Victor came back in, the night air and the same perfume followed him. He didn't look at her. He didn't say goodnight. He walked upstairs, leaving her alone with a quiet house and louder thoughts. She sat there long after he disappeared, staring at her reflection in the dark window, wondering when the man she married became someone who whispered another woman's name. In the days that followed, those hairline cracks in her trust would widen into something she could no longer ignore. The moment that shatters what remains of her trust is coming, and this time, it leaves a mark she can't hide. If someone had pressed pause on her life and replayed the worst moment frame by frame, it would start here. The sound exploded first, sharp, sudden, violent in its intention. Elena didn't process what happened until her vision blurred for half a second. Her cheek burned, heat spreading across her skin. Victor Reed, her husband, the man she once believed would protect her, stood in front of her, chest heaving, eyes wide with a mixture of anger and something uglier, control. Elena, 32, gentle but steady, was not used to violence. She was used to listening, compromising, hoping that honest conversations could fix problems. Victor, 35, had been changing for weeks. Late nights, secretive calls. The name Sabrina spoken in tones Elena was never given. Messages from Marcus that hinted at things she didn't see. And now, this. "What was that?" Elena whispered, voice shaking more from disbelief than from the impact. Victor didn't apologize. He didn't rush to check if she was hurt. He looked at his own hand instead, flexing his fingers like he'd brushed against something unpleasant. "It's your fault," he muttered. "You keep pushing. You keep asking questions. You're making things harder than they need to be." All she had asked was why he smelled like another woman's perfume again, why Marcus seemed worried, why Victor had started hiding his phone. For him, that was enough to consider her the problem. A painful silence filled the room. Then a soft gasp sounded from the hallway outside their front door. Olivia Hart, their neighbor, stood there frozen. She was 42, lived alone, and often left small potted plants near their shared corridor. That evening, she had come to return a misdelivered package that had been dropped at her door by mistake. The door had been slightly ajar. She had heard the argument. She had heard the words. And now she had seen the slap. Her hand covered her mouth, eyes wide with shock and concern. Victor didn't notice her. He was too busy reclaiming the moment with words. "Elena, don't act dramatic," he said, tone sharp. "People argue. Couples argue. Don't make a scene out of nothing." His words hurt less than the realization behind them. He didn't see this as something. He saw it as normal, maybe even justified. Elena raised a shaking hand and touched her cheek. Her fingers met hot skin. Her mind pulled her backward into a memory. Her father, Elias Ward, sitting in the old family library when she was 16. Shelves full of books. Dust floating in the light. "If someone uses their strength to hurt you," he said, his hand steady on her shoulder, "don't fight them with fists. Fight them with your mind. Protect your dignity, not their pride." At the time, she didn't understand why he looked so serious when he said it. She never imagined she would need that advice in her own living room. The flashback faded. Victor grabbed his jacket from the back of a chair. "I'm going out," he said sharply. "Don't wait up." He brushed past Olivia in the hallway without seeing her. She stepped back quickly, heart pounding. Once the door closed behind him, Olivia hurried inside, holding the small package against her chest. "Elena, I heard everything," she whispered. "Are you okay? Do you need help? Should I call someone? Your sister?" Elena lowered her hand from her face. Her eyes glistened, but no tears fell. She looked calmer than she felt. A calm born from something breaking and then going strangely still. "No," Elena said softly. "I'm all right." She wasn't, but she was making a decision in that silence. Olivia squeezed her arm gently. "You don't deserve this. If you ever need a statement or someone to say what they saw, I will." The words landed quietly but firmly. A witness, a line of truth that could not be unsaid. After Olivia left, Elena sat on the sofa, the house feeling like a stranger's home. He slapped her, and he enjoyed the control it gave him. That wasn't an accident. It was a sign that the man she married was gone, and in his place stood someone willing to hurt her to protect his lies. Her phone buzzed on the table. She almost ignored it, until she saw the screen. Unknown number. One message. "I know what Victor has been doing. We need to talk." Her heart hammered. For a second, she thought of Marcus, of his unfinished warning. She stared at the message, the bruise on her cheek throbbing with each beat of her heart. The next discovery would not just hurt her feelings, it would change the entire direction of her life. Pressure, demands, and a forced decision are coming, and they won't be as simple as a signature on paper. Morning didn't arrive with sunlight. It arrived with a loud slam, a thick folder hitting the dining table so hard the sound echoed through the quiet apartment. Elena flinched. Victor Reed stood over her, jaw tight, suit already on, as if this were just another efficient appointment in his schedule. "Sign here," he said. "Now." No apology for the slap, no mention of last night, no question about how she slept or if her cheek still hurt. Just orders and divorce papers. The impact of the moment hits hard, then thins into a cold, steady calm. Elena stared at the folder, the bold black letters on the top page blurred before her eyes. Petition for dissolution of marriage. It felt unreal and at the same time, strangely expected. She could still feel the echo of his hand, still see Olivia's shocked face, still hear the way he had dismissed everything as nothing. And now suddenly he wanted her gone, but in a way that made everything easy for him. Victor crossed his arms. "I don't want to drag this out," he said. "I want freedom, and you just need to cooperate." Behind him stood Evan Dre, his business partner. Evan looked uncomfortable but stayed silent. He wasn't there for Elena. He was there as a witness, someone who could later say, "Yes, she signed. Yes, she seemed calm." Elena swallowed. "Victor, Why are you doing this like it's a business deal? After last night, he cut her off. Last night was you pushing me. This is me fixing my life. His phone buzzed on the table. The name lit up the screen clearly this time. Sabrina, he answered without shame. Yeah, I'm here, he said, turning his back a little. I told you, I'm handling it. She'll sign. A pause, a short laugh. No, she's not fighting me. She's too soft for that. He ended the call and didn't bother hiding the satisfied look on his face. Evan shifted awkwardly, staring at a spot on the wall. To lock everything in, Victor pulled up another contact and pressed call, putting it on speaker. Reddick, it's Victor Reed, a calm male voice answered. This is Malcolm Reddick. Officer Malcolm Reddick worked as building security and also part-time with local law enforcement. Elena had seen him around the property, always neutral, always polite. There's a domestic situation, Victor said, carefully choosing his words. My wife and I are signing divorce papers. I want a neutral witness so there's no claim of pressure later. Can you come up? Elena's head snapped up. He was setting the scene, not just for her, for whoever might one day ask what happened. There was a brief pause. I'll come by, Officer Reddick replied, but I'm only there to observe, Mr. Reed. I can't force anything. That's fine, Victor said smoothly. Just be present. Within minutes, a knock sounded at the door. Officer Reddick walked in, scanning the room with a practiced eye. He took in Elena's pale face, Victor's rigid stance, Evan's uneasy posture. What exactly am I walking into? He asked evenly. Victor pointed at the papers. We're signing a divorce agreement, and I want it on record that she wasn't threatened or forced. Elena heard the quiet twist in those words. He wanted proof things looked fair, even if they didn't feel that way. Reddick turned to Elena. His voice softened. Ma'am, do you understand what you're signing? She nodded slowly. Yes. Do you want a lawyer present? He asked. The question hung in the air. Victor tensed, just enough for someone paying attention to notice. Elena's chest tightened. A part of her wanted to say yes. Another part remembered her father's conditions. The trust that would only fully awaken if she walked away from this marriage without trying to cling to Victor's wealth. Her voice came out steady. No, I'll sign. Victor's shoulders relaxed, relief flickering across his face. Reddick didn't move closer. He stayed by the door, watching calmly. He wasn't there to intimidate her. He was there to make sure no one crossed a line. Evan stepped back, giving her space. Elena picked up the pen. Her hands trembled once, then grew still. The agreement in front of her was simple and cruel. No request for spousal support, no claim to his business assets, no fight for anything that had his name on it. She read each page, slowly, carefully. Every clause she accepted without arguing didn't just free him. It activated the silent promise her father had built for her years ago. With each signature, she released any legal claim to Victor's money, and with each signature, she stepped closer to the trust he didn't know existed. When she signed the final page, Victor exhaled like he'd just closed a deal. This is good, he said. This is the right step. He gathered the papers quickly, already talking about filing them today so everything could move fast. As he walked Officer Reddick and Evan to the door, Reddick paused and turned back to her. If you need anything, he said quietly, including a statement about how this happened, you can contact me. For a second, Elena saw it. He had noticed her cheek, the faint discoloration, the way she held herself. Then he left. The apartment fell silent. Elena stood alone by the table. No papers left in front of her, only a faint imprint where the folder had been. Her phone buzzed. A new message from the same unknown number as the night of the slap. Meet me. I can show you what Victor has been hiding. Her heartbeat steadied. The coldness in her eyes wasn't emptiness anymore. It was focus. The truth was no longer just threatening her marriage. It was about to redirect her entire future. A night of quiet collapse will awaken a strength she didn't know she still had. The night did not explode with anger. It simply went quiet. Elena sat alone in the dark living room, the shape of the dining table a shadow in front of her. The spot where the divorce papers once lay was empty now. Her cheeks still remembered the slap. Her heart still remembered the man she thought Victor was. But she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't even move for a long time. She felt nothing. It was the kind of numbness that doesn't comfort. It just covers everything like a heavy blanket. Slowly, the story sinks into reflection. Eleanor Reed, soft-spoken and loyal, had always believed love was something you worked on, not walked away from. She was the kind of person who tried to fix what was broken, even when she wasn't the one who broke it. Her father, Elias Ward, had been the opposite of Victor in all the ways that mattered. He built wealth quietly. Old investments, private companies, land that had been in the family long before Elena was born. But he never raised his voice to prove he was powerful. He never raised his hand to prove he was in control. Flashback unfolds. Warm light, familiar furniture, the steady scratch of a pen on paper. A younger Elena, around 18, sat in her father's study. The tall windows looked out on green fields. The shelves were full of law books and ledgers. Elias held a folder with her name on it. "This," he said gently, "is the Ward Trust." He opened it, showing her a stack of documents she didn't fully understand at the time. "It will protect you," he explained, "but it is not a prize for greed, Elena. It's a safety net for your heart." He told her the conditions clearly. The trust would remain dormant while her life was stable. It would fully activate only if she married for love, and later walked away from a marriage without trying to profit from its end. "If someone loves you, they won't try to control you with money," he said. "And if you ever have to leave, I never want you to stay out of fear of not having enough." She remembered smiling, a little embarrassed. "Dad, I don't think I'll ever be in that kind of marriage." Elias smiled back, sadness in his eyes she didn't understand then. "I hope you're right." The flashback fades. Back in the present, the house felt smaller than before. The furniture felt mismatched to her life. Victor had taken the papers to file them. The marriage was ending on his timeline, but the conditions he thought were giving him freedom were quietly unlocking hers. Her phone lay beside her. She picked it up, not to call Victor, not to beg, but because she needed someone who still saw her clearly. She called Clara. Clara answered on the first ring. "Elena, you never call this late. What happened?" Elena opened her mouth. For a moment, nothing came out. Then her throat loosened. "He gave me divorce papers," she whispered. "I signed them." Clara didn't shout. Didn't say, "I told you so." She exhaled slowly, choosing her words like stepping stones. "Then he doesn't deserve another minute of your life. Come stay with me tonight. Please." Elena looked around the apartment that had been called their home. It no longer felt like hers. "I'm okay," she said softly. It was a lie Clara could hear. "Elena," Clara said, voice gentle but firm. "You're not alone. Dad didn't leave you alone either. Call me if you change your mind." They hung up. The numbness shifted, just a little. A crack in the silence where something else could enter. Her phone rang again. A different name appeared this time. Aunt Miriam. Elena straightened instinctively. "Aunt Miriam?" Miriam's voice was calm, but there was a weight behind it. "Elena, I received notice today from the trust lawyers." "Notice?" Elena asked. "The divorce petition was filed," Miriam said. "Our legal team has triggers on your name for this exact reason. Your father planned for this." Elena's heart stumbled. "What does that mean?" "It means," Miriam said slowly, "the contract is activating. The Ward Trust is moving from dormant protection to full inheritance." Silence stretched, but it wasn't empty this time. "Elena," Miriam continued, "we need to meet. Tomorrow. The lawyers, the trustee, everyone your father put in place. There are things you need to see." Fear flickered through her. Not of Victor. Not anymore. It was fear of how big her life suddenly was beneath the quiet surface. But beneath the fear, something else rose. Something steady. Something her father had hoped she would one day feel. Purpose. She ended the call and sat in the dim room, staring into the darkness. For the first time that night, she didn't feel empty. She felt ready. Tomorrow she would learn that her silence had not made her weak. It had protected a power Victor never even thought to look for. Evidence, secrets, and a powerful shift are about to begin, and the unknown messages will finally reveal the person behind them. The shock hit first, not from Victor this time, but from the number printed in clear, bold ink on the document in front of her. $400,000. Elena stared at it, breath trapped in her chest. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but from the weight of realizing just how much her father had been protecting all along. Across from her sat Aunt Miriam Ward. Elegant, strict, the quiet guardian of everything Ward. They were in a private meeting room at a downtown law office. Tall windows, a long table, shelves lined with neatly organized binders. "Elena," Miriam said gently, "your trust has officially activated. The divorce filing triggered the clause your father wrote years ago." The intensity of the moment slowly softened into reflection. Elena swallowed. "I never wanted money to be the reason I stayed or left," she said quietly. "I know," Miriam replied. "That's why he trusted you with this. He didn't design this trust to change your heart. He designed it to protect it." Before Elena could answer, the door opened. Attorney Mara Ewan stepped in, a woman in her early 40s, sharp-eyed, calm, and controlled. She set a laptop and a thick folder on the table. "Mrs. Reed," she greeted with a small nod. "I've handled Ward family legal affairs since before your father passed. We've been tracking your marital status in case this day ever came." Right behind her came another presence. Daniel Pierce, 38, walked in with a slim case over his shoulder. Calm eyes, observant posture, movements that said he saw more than he said. "Elena," he said respectfully, "we've met briefly before. Your father hired me years ago to keep an eye on anyone who might try to take advantage of you. I've been in the background ever since." Something clicked in her mind. "The messages," Elena said slowly. "The unknown number that texted me after the slap. The one that said, 'I know what Victor has been doing.' Was that you?" Daniel nodded once. "Yes. I didn't use my name at first. I didn't know how closely Victor was watching your phone. I didn't want to put you in more danger." A quiet logic gap closed. No more mystery stranger. Just a man her father trusted, finally stepping forward. Mara slid the thick folder toward Elena. "This," she said, "is what we've gathered so far." Elena opened it carefully. The first document was a preliminary report from the trust lawyers, confirming that the divorce filing and her choice not to pursue Victor's assets had activated her rights to the full Ward fortune. The next pages held records Daniel had been assembling over the past months. Photos of Victor and Sabrina entering a hotel, sitting close in a restaurant, standing too comfortably in a parking lot. Bank statements showing unauthorized charges from the joint account. Hotels, jewelry, dinners, luxury gifts. Screenshots of messages Daniel had recovered, including one where Victor wrote to Sabrina, "Once she signs, we'll be free. Your dad will finally take me seriously." Elena's chest tightened at that line. It wasn't just an affair, it was strategy. Victor wasn't just leaving her for another woman. He was trading her for access. Mara watched her carefully. "Elena," she said, "you haven't asked Victor for anything. No support, no share of his business. From a legal standpoint, you have been more than fair. That gives you clean footing if this ever becomes public." Elena closed the folder slowly. Her hands were steady now. "What do we do?" she asked. "We don't rush," Mara replied. "We gather everything. We build the strongest possible case. When we walk into court, we don't go in angry. We go in prepared." Daniel added, "I'll keep tracking Victor and Sabrina. Now that he thinks you're broken and out of the way, he's getting careless. That carelessness will give us more proof." For the first time in days, Elena didn't feel like someone things were happening to. She felt like someone making a choice. Miriam reached out and placed her hand over Elena's. "Your father wanted you to know this. You never have to fight like them. You fight with truth, and now you have support to do it." Later that afternoon, as Elena stepped out of the law office, her phone buzzed again. This time, the name on the screen wasn't unknown. It was Daniel. "He just booked dinner with Sabrina tonight. If you're ready to see the truth for yourself, meet me. I'll be outside your building at 7. A chill ran through her. Not of fear, but of final clarity approaching. Tonight, she would no longer imagine what Victor was doing behind her back. She would watch it with her own eyes. The evidence deepens, and the plan for justice begins to take its final shape. The night started with intensity, not from shouting, but from the sharp click of a camera shutter. A flash, a frozen frame. Daniel Pierce stood partially hidden behind a parked car across the street from a downtown restaurant. Camera raised, eyes steady. Through the wide windows, he watched Victor read. Victor sat at a table with Sabrina Cole. Her hand rested on his arm. He leaned in too close. They laughed like nothing in the world existed except their conversation and their reflection in the glass. From the passenger seat of Daniel's car, Elena saw everything. The angle was distant, but not distant enough. Sabrina's perfume, which once arrived in her home only as a lingering scent on Victor's clothes, was now attached to a face, a smile, a person who knowingly sat in her place. Daniel snapped photo after photo. He spoke quietly, not taking his eyes off the lens. "I know this is hard to see," he said, "but this is how we make sure he can't twist the story later." Elena didn't look away. Her fingers curled around the edge of her seat. "It's not just hard," she murmured. "It's honest." Honesty hurt, but it was still better than living in questions. Over the next hour, they watched Victor pay the bill with the joint card that still carried her name. They watched him open the car door for Sabrina. They watched him press his hand against her back in a gesture that used to belong to Elena, and Daniel documented all of it. Later that week, back at Aunt Miriam's private office, the long table was no longer empty. It held stacks of printed photos, financial reports, phone screenshots, and legal drafts. Around it sat the people now woven into Elena's fight. Mara Ewan, the family attorney, sharp, calm, unshaken. Aunt Miriam, dignified and steady. Clara Ward, Elena's younger sister, protective, angry, but controlled. Greg Lorne, 50, a financial auditor known for exposing hidden fraud, hired by Mara to comb through every line of Victor's transactions. Daniel, investigator, quietly confident, the one who turns shadows into evidence. Elena sat at the head of the table, not because she asked to, but because everyone naturally left that chair for her. Mara opened a folder and slid several photos forward. "These are from the restaurant and the hotel," she said. Daniel made sure everything is time-stamped. No gaps, no room for excuses. Greg cleared his throat and opened his laptop, the screen filled with charts and numbers. "Elena," he said gently, "I traced the joint account for the last 6 months. There are repeated charges that don't match your spending at all." He tapped the screen. "Hotel stays, jewelry, dinner reservations, salon visits. Some of them line up with timestamps from Daniel's photos. Others match locations we know Sabrina has posted from online." Clara clenched her jaw. "So he was using her money to impress his mistress?" Greg nodded. "And to pay for meetings connected to Sabrina's father. It appears Victor has been chasing a business deal he couldn't access on his own." Mara turned to Elena. "Your father anticipated this kind of person," she said. "Someone who would see you as a stepping stone, not as a partner." Clara unlocked her phone and slid it across the table. "I got this from a friend who works near Victor's office," she said. On the screen was a forwarded message Victor had sent Sabrina. "Once Elena signs, your dad will finally open those doors. Everything changes then." Elena read it once, then again. He didn't just leave her. He tried to trade her dignity for entrance into someone else's world. Mara reached into her bag and took out a sealed, thick envelope clipped with red. "This," she said quietly, "is the complete package we'll submit to the court when the hearing date comes." Inside it lay Olivia Hart's written statement about the slap. Officer Reddick's incident note, confirming Victor's stage call and the bruise he observed. Daniel's photos of Victor and Sabrina. Greg's financial audit. Copies of the messages tying Sabrina's father to Victor's ambitions. Proof of the Ward Trust activation and Elena's clean decision not to pursue Victor's assets. Elena's counter-petition citing abuse and financial misconduct. "This envelope," Mara said, tapping it once, "goes directly to the judge, not to Victor, not to his lawyer, not for negotiation, for record." A deep, powerful silence filled the room. Elena looked at the envelope, fingers brushing the edge. It felt heavier than paper. It felt like closure, waiting for its moment. "I'm ready," she said quietly. Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then at Elena. "Victor's been asking around," Daniel said. "He's nervous. He told someone you're being too quiet, and he doesn't trust it. He thinks you might try to come after his money. Mara's eyes sharpened. Good, she said. Let him be afraid of the wrong thing. The closer Elena moved to truth, the more dangerous Victor's assumptions became, and the more powerful her silence truly was. The courtroom doors will open, Victor expecting routine, Elena arriving prepared. The tension struck instantly. The moment the heavy courtroom doors opened, and Victor Reed walked in like a man expecting applause. His shoes clicked against the polished floor. His suit was perfect. His hair was neat. His smile was smug. To him, today was supposed to be simple. A quick divorce confirmation, a formal stamp, a clean new life with Sabrina and her father's connections. He believed Elena would stand there quiet and defeated. He believed she would sign whatever was handed to her. He had no idea what waited for him. Elena stood at the respondent's table, calm and composed. She wore a simple outfit, no flashy jewelry, no dramatic expression, but there was a steadiness in her posture that hadn't been there weeks before. Behind her sat Olivia Hart, the neighbor, hands clasped together, nervous but determined. Officer Malcolm Reddick, uniform neat, expression steady. Clara Ward, protective, eyes sharp. Aunt Miriam, quiet but solid as stone. Daniel Pierce and Greg Lorne, ready with evidence if needed. Near the back of the room, Evan Dre, Victor's business partner, uncertain why the hearing suddenly seemed more serious than he'd expected. Sabrina Cole in a fitted dress, sitting with crossed legs and an expression that tried very hard to look unconcerned. At the front of the room sat Judge Rosalind Hale, a firm, intelligent woman in her 50s, with a reputation for disliking drama and loving facts. Court Clerk Donovan organized files beside her with calm efficiency. Court is now in session, Clerk Donovan announced. Case of Victor Reed versus Elena Reed. Victor stood quickly, ready to direct the story. Your Honor, he began, this is a straightforward dissolution. My wife and I, Judge Hale raised a hand. Mr. Reed, I've read your petition. Sit down for now. Victor's mouth opened in surprise, but he obeyed. Then the judge turned to Elena. Mrs. Reed, she said, your counsel submitted a supplemental envelope to be added to the record, along with a counter petition. Do you wish to proceed with that? Elena inhaled softly. Yes, Your Honor. Mara Ewan, seated beside her, slid the sealed envelope, toward the court clerk. Donovan took it to the judge. Victor's smirk faded a little. What is that? He demanded. We didn't talk about any extra paperwork. Judge Hale opened the envelope and began to read. The room went silent, page after page, statement after statement, document after document. Inside she found Olivia's written testimony describing the day she witnessed the slap, Officer Reddick's report outlining Victor's staged call and noting the bruise he observed on Elena's face, photographs of Victor and Sabrina together at multiple locations, clearly time-stamped, Greg's financial audit of the joint account showing hotel payments, expensive dinners, and gifts not connected to Elena, screenshots of Victor's messages to Sabrina about being free once Elena signed, and about her father finally taking him seriously, official confirmation of the Ward Trust, showing Elena as beneficiary of a vast inheritance that she had not used to threaten or control the marriage. Elena's counter-petition, citing marital misconduct, emotional abuse, and financial misuse. When Judge Hale finally looked up, her eyes were cool and sharp. Mr. Reed, she said, do you have an explanation for these materials? Victor stood, color draining from his face. That's exaggerated. Photos can be misleading. She's trying to make me look like a monster because she's rich and... So? Judge Hale cut in. You are not denying that the woman in these photos is Sabrina Cole? And that the funds in question came from a joint account you shared with your wife? Victor's jaw worked. He glanced toward Sabrina. She shifted in her seat, suddenly less comfortable. I don't see how that's relevant to a simple divorce, Victor stammered. It becomes relevant, Judge Hale replied, voice firm, when one party tries to present themselves as the aggrieved side while concealing an affair, misusing joint funds, and possibly staging events to make the other party appear uncooperative. She turned to Officer Reddick. Officer, please stand. Reddick rose. In your report, Judge Hale said, You state that Mr. Reed called you to witness his wife signing divorce papers, and that upon arrival, you observed physical bruising on Mrs. Reed's face. You also noted she agreed to sign without requesting any share of his business or personal property. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, Reddick replied. She was calm and cooperative. If anything, I was more concerned about her safety than Mr. Reed's. Next, Judge Hale addressed Olivia. Ms. Hart, you stated that you witnessed Mr. Reed strike his wife. Is that still your statement today? Olivia's voice shook, but her words did not. Yes, Your Honor, I saw it. Victor's facade cracked. Sweat gathered at his temples. This is a setup, he snapped. She's using her money and her family too. Judge Hale brought her gavel down once, sharply. Enough! The sound cut through the room. This is not about who has more money, Mr. Reed. This is about conduct, your conduct. She shuffled the files, her expression unchanged. Given the evidence presented, she announced, this court finds that Mr. Reed engaged in marital misconduct, committed financial misuse of joint funds, and attempted to mislead this court by omission. Victor staggered slightly. Sabrina stared straight ahead, face pale. As such, Judge Hale continued, any financial claims you have made against Mrs. Reed are denied. Penalty fees for misuse of funds may apply, and relevant sections of this file will be forwarded for possible further investigation. A restraining order is granted in Mrs. Reed's favor until this matter is fully resolved. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Sabrina stood abruptly, heels scraping the floor, and hurried out without a single glance back at Victor. Evan Dre shifted away from Victor's side on the bench, as though distance might save what remained of his reputation. Victor looked around wildly. At the judge, at Elena, at the empty doorway where Sabrina had vanished. He had walked in expecting control. He was leaving stripped of it. Judge Hale struck her gavel once more. This hearing is adjourned. People moved, whispering, gathering their things. Elena stayed still a moment longer, not gloating, not celebrating, just breathing finally without fear. As Victor stumbled toward the exit, two officials stepped forward near the doorway. Mr. Reed, one said, voice low but firm, we need to speak with you about the financial irregularities flagged in today's evidence. Please come with us. The consequences he thought he'd outrun were no longer in his control, and this time, there was no one left to blame but himself. Victor's public collapse begins just outside those courthouse doors. Chaos hit the moment the courthouse doors swung open. Victor Reed burst outside as if he could escape the judgment that still clung to his name. Elena, he shouted, voice cracking through the open air. Elena, wait! People on the wide stone steps turned to look. Lawyers, clerks, strangers. Everyone paused to watch the man who once walked like he owned every room, now stumble like the ground might drop beneath him. He rushed down a few steps and nearly lost his balance. His tie was crooked. His face was flushed. His eyes were wild. This intense chase slows, pulling deeper into the emotional center. Elena stood near the railing to the side of the stairs, back turned slightly. She hadn't hurried away. She hadn't tried to hide. She simply stood there, the sunlight touching her hair, her posture calm. She heard him before she saw him. She recognized the frantic sound of his shoes scraping against stone. Victor came to an unsteady stop behind her. Then, he dropped. Right there in front of the courthouse, in front of everyone, Victor fell to his knees. Elena, please, he choked out. We can fix this. I'll change. I swear. I made mistakes, but you know me. You know me, people whispered. Some stared openly. Some looked away, uncomfortable. Officer Malcolm Reddick stepped out of the building a moment later, having given his testimony earlier. He stopped at the top of the steps, watching carefully. Beside him, Daniel Pierce adjusted his position, staying close enough to reach Elena if Victor lost control. Elena, please look at me, Victor begged. His hands shook as he reached toward her. Tell them to stop. Tell them to back off. You don't need all of this. I need you. You can't leave me like this. Slowly, she turned. Her eyes were calm, not cruel, not vengeful, just finished. Victor, she said softly, for years I thought if I loved you enough, you would choose to be better. But this is what you chose instead. He shook his head quickly, tears forming. It was just, It was just a mistake. Sabrina doesn't matter. None of that matters. I'll break it off. I'll do anything. We can start over. Just don't let them ruin me. There it was. Not don't leave me because I love you, but don't let them ruin me. Officer Reddick moved down the steps, his posture firm but controlled. Mr. Reed, he said, you need to stand up. You're causing a scene. Victor jerked away from his hand. She's my wife, he shouted, voice breaking. Elena, tell him, say something. Daniel stepped closer, placing himself slightly between them. She was your wife, Daniel said evenly, and you treated her like she didn't matter. She doesn't owe you a performance out here? Victor glared at Daniel, but the anger quickly dissolved into panic. He turned his head, searching. Sabrina, he called out suddenly. Sabrina, wait, don't leave. You said we'd do this together. All heads turned. Farther down the courtyard, Sabrina Cole stood near the curb, arms wrapped around herself. She looked smaller without Victorian arrogance propping her up. When Victor shouted her name, she hesitated, then turned away and moved toward a waiting car. She opened the door, slid inside, and shut it without a backward glance. The car pulled away. Victor's voice broke. Sabrina! Sabrina! But she was gone. Evan Dre appeared a moment later, exiting the courthouse with slow steps. Victor reached toward him with desperate eyes. Evan, you're my friend. Tell them I'm not a bad guy. Help me fix this. Please. Evan looked at him, at the man on his knees, at the gathering eyes, at the weight of the evidence he had just heard in court. I didn't know it was like this, Evan said quietly. You lied to me too, Victor. I can't stand next to this and pretend I didn't hear what I heard. He stepped away, leaving Victor alone on the steps. Reflection deepens. In a matter of hours, Victor had lost his public reputation, his business connections, his access to Sabrina and her father's influence, his claim to Elena's money, his illusion of control. Karma didn't whisper, it spoke loudly, in front of everyone. Officer Reddick finally placed a hand firmly, but not roughly, on Victor's arm. Mr. Reed, that's enough, he said. You need to stand. Go with the officials who asked to speak with you. This isn't the place to argue anymore. Victor's body shook. His eyes were red. His voice had burned out. Elena watched him a moment longer, not to enjoy his pain, but to witness the ending of a story she once believed would last forever. Then she turned to Daniel. Let's go, she said softly. As they walked toward the parking lot, Reddick called out to her quietly. Elena, he said, people who feel like they've lost everything sometimes react badly. Make sure you're never alone at home for a while, all right? Keep your family close. She nodded. I will. When she reached her car, her phone buzzed with a new message from Mara Ewan. Elena, your father left something else for you. Not money, something you need to read. Come by the office when you can. Her freedom from Victor was not the end of her story. It was only clearing space for the final truth her father had kept waiting. Elena steps into a new life, with one last message from her father guiding the way. The moment hit with intensity, a door closing behind Elena as she stepped into her new home for the first time. Not Victor's apartment, not a place filled with fear, waiting, or pretending. Her home, her space, her beginning. Sunlight poured through wide windows, washing the empty living room in soft warmth. The air felt different, open, breathable, almost like the room itself was exhaling with her. Clara Ward walked in behind her, carrying a box labeled Kitchen. She set it down and smiled, eyes shiny with held-back tears. You're home now, Clara said quietly. Elena nodded. The smile that touched her lips was small, but real. Earlier that day, before picking up the keys, she had gone back to Mara Ewan's office, just as the message requested. In a quiet conference room, Mara and Aunt Miriam had been waiting, with one last sealed envelope. Not for the court, not for any judge, for Elena alone. This was written by your father, Miriam explained. He left it with the trust documents to be given to you only if the divorce triggers activated your inheritance. Her hands had trembled slightly as she broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter. No legal language, no numbers. Just Elias Ward's voice on paper. He wrote about the day she was born, the first time she held his finger as a baby. The way she always tried to fix broken toys instead of throwing them away. And then, the heart of it, If you are reading this, it means you chose dignity over revenge. It means someone failed to love you as you deserved, but you refused to become like them. My wealth was never meant to trap you in a marriage. It was meant to make sure you could walk away from one. He ended with a quiet instruction. Use what I left you to rebuild, yes, but also to lift others who were hurt the way you were. That will be our real legacy. The memory of that letter now sat with her in the new home like a gentle presence. In the living room, Aunt Miriam and Mara joined her, stepping over unopened boxes. You handled everything with dignity, Miriam said. Your father would be proud, not because you won, but because you stayed true to who you are. Mara added, you didn't weaponize your wealth. You let the truth speak. That's rare. Eleanor walked to a small wooden drawer built into a side table near the window. Inside, she placed a copy of the same envelope she had once given the judge, the file that had exposed everything Victor tried to hide. She closed the drawer gently, not out of bitterness, but as a symbol, a chapter finished, documented, and put away. He broke the woman he thought was powerless, but she rebuilt a life he never deserved to be part of. The camera of the story pulls back. Sunlight deepens. Her silhouette stands steady in the center of her own space. Some stories end in silence. Others end with a woman quietly choosing herself and finding that her true beginning starts right there. Thank you so much for watching this story. If Elena's journey touched you, don't let it end here. Hit the like button, share this video with someone who needs strength today, and tell me in the comments what lesson you're taking from her story and where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next story. See you in my next video. Unaware the wife he ignored was about to buy his company, husband poured dirty water on her at the business dinner. As his boss laughed, what she did next ruined his career. He didn't just embarrass her. He stood up in front of his co-workers, his boss, and his own mistress, and dumped a cloudy jug of leftover table water over his wife's dress like she was a joke. That night, in an upscale restaurant reserved for a corporate dinner, Emma Harper sat quietly at the long table, trying to support her husband. Daniel Harper, a proud mid-level manager desperate to impress, was busy showing off. His boss, Mr. Lawson, already half drunk, kept pushing him to lighten the mood. Someone laughed and asked, "Does your wife ever stand up to you, Daniel?" Daniel's pride flared. He grabbed the cloudy jug of melted ice, lemon slices, and herbs, glanced at his assistant Chloe, the same woman he'd been calling late at night, and smirked. She can't even handle this. Splash! The cold, dirty water soaked Emma from shoulder to lap. The whole table exploded in laughter. Mr. Lawson slapped the table. Chloe smirked. A few phones quietly came up. Eyes stared. Emma didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply stood up, water dripping to the floor, and looked at her husband like she was seeing him for the last time. "Thank you," she said quietly. This clarified everything. They thought she would leave in shame and disappear. What none of them knew was this. The woman they just mocked had been quietly buying shares of the very company they worked for, through a maze of hidden companies legally tied to her maiden name. Behind the polite smile and the soaked dress stood the true majority owner of Baxter Tech, and soon the man who poured dirty water on her to impress his boss would walk into a boardroom and realize he'd just handed his entire career to the wife he ignored. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it's like letting Emma's voice be drowned out by their laughter again. When you click that button, you stand with every person who was humiliated, underestimated, and still rose higher than anyone expected. Please subscribe now, and in the comments, tell me where you're watching from. The glow of the laptop screen lit Emma Harper's face like a quiet storm waiting to break. It was almost midnight, but she sat upright in her home office, fingers frozen above the keyboard, eyes fixed on the long list of unread messages from her husband, Daniel. 47 unread messages, most of them from the last 3 days. Excuses, half-hearted apologies, sudden bursts of fake affection that always came after he crossed a line. He wanted to talk about last night. He wanted to explain. He wanted another chance. Emma didn't open a single one. She selected them all and hit delete. This was not a dramatic gesture. It was a practiced motion, something she had done many nights before when Daniel turned cruel, then tried to patch it with words instead of change. But tonight felt different. Tonight she felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not confusion, only clarity. Emma Harper, 34 years old, wife of Daniel Harper and founder of one of the most successful eco-care brands in the country, looked around her office. Papers were spread across the desk, early sketches of product labels from her first brand, financial reports with numbers high enough to make anyone blink, and a laptop open to a dashboard labeled Harper Strategic Holdings. It wasn't the name anyone at Baxter Tech saw in public reports. On paper, the company was controlled by layers of funds and trusts. But here, in this private dashboard, it held the name she chose for herself after she got married. Only two people besides her knew that she was the real owner: her lawyer, Mr. Collins, and her financial advisor, Michael Grant. Certainly not Daniel. Daniel Harper, also 34, was a mid-level manager at Baxter Tech. Proud, charming, and always trying to climb higher. He liked to appear powerful. He liked to act like the decision maker. He liked being seen as the strong one in the marriage. He had no idea the woman he overlooked every day was the reason he could afford that image. Emma leaned back in her chair, letting the quiet room settle around her. Her story didn't begin with power. It began with exhaustion. 10 years earlier, a much younger Emma stood in a tiny rented storage space that smelled like melted wax and lavender oil. She was 24, working late into the night, packing handmade candles and skincare jars for her small business, Emel Naturals. Money was tight. Her hands were cracked from mixing batches. She slept 4 hours a night. She didn't tell anyone how hard those nights were. Not even her parents knew the full story. But she kept going because she believed in the products she made, and she believed in herself. As the orders slowly grew, she taught herself branding, marketing, and logistics. She learned to register trademarks, negotiate prices, and talk to suppliers who barely took her seriously. When her brand suddenly went viral online for its clean ingredients, everything changed. Orders exploded. Blogs wrote about her. Influencers mentioned her without being paid a cent. Then the emails came. Investors, distributors, a private equity firm with an offer she never imagined possible. When that firm finally bought Emel Naturals, she agreed, but only under one careful condition that Mr. Collins helped her add. Her remaining revenue streams and profit shares would be funneled into a network of blind trusts with her birth name, Emma Lane, quietly listed as the ultimate owner. That decision became the seed of something bigger. It became Harper Strategic Holdings, the quiet empire behind her calm face. Daniel never asked where the money came from. Emma told him she had sold a small online shop before they met, and that the rest of the money was locked away in long-term investments. He never pushed for details. He never questioned how that small shop paid for their house, his early job losses, and his growing taste for expensive suits. He didn't wonder because he didn't look. Emma met Daniel at a volunteer event when she was 27. He was charming, warm, and funny. He liked her smile, her softness, her simplicity. Emma wore jeans and a plain t-shirt that day, her hair in a loose ponytail. She never mentioned Emel Naturals or the sale. She didn't want to lead with success. She wanted someone who loved her heart first, and Daniel did, at least at the beginning. They married 2 years later. In those early days, Daniel was attentive, grateful, affectionate. He bragged about how lucky he was. He said he didn't care how much she made, as long as they were together. Emma believed she had found a true partner. She believed he saw her. She believed he cared. But ambition changed him, or maybe it revealed him. In recent years, Daniel grew distant. He praised his co-workers more than his wife. He cut Emma off in conversations. He forgot important dates. He stayed out late and brushed off questions. When Baxter Tech hired him, he made the job his whole identity. He cared more about his boss's approval than Emma's feelings. He treated Emma's calm nature like weakness. He didn't see the discipline behind her silence. He didn't see the woman he married. Emma was not weak. She was waiting. She turned back to her laptop and opened a folder labeled Baxter Tech Investments. Dozens of transactions filled the screen. Small purchases over several years through different funds and entities Mr. Collins had set up. Together, they now controlled just under 48% of Baxter Tech. One final agreed-upon block of shares, already negotiated, waiting only for her signal, would make her the majority owner. A cold, steady breath escaped her lips. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mr. Collins, timed exactly when he said it would come. Collins. Acquisition timeline moved up. Our side can complete the final purchase within days. Are you ready to confirm? Emma stared at the message, her pulse slow and steady. Ready? She had been ready for years. She just hadn't been sure why she would use that power. Tonight, something inside her shifted. Something powerful. Something final. She typed, "Yes, proceed as planned." As she hit send, a quiet thought crossed her mind. A thought that would lead directly into the breaking point waiting in the next scene. Before these shares are final, Daniel is going to show me exactly who he really is. The shouting started the very next evening, before Emma even reached the living room. Daniel's voice thundered through the house, sharp, irritated, impatient. "How many times do I have to say it? Don't rearrange my files." He wasn't yelling at Emma. He was yelling at his laptop, at an email that didn't load the way he wanted, at a presentation Chloe had sent late. But the sound hit Emma like a slap all the same. The calm of the house cracked open. Emma froze in the hallway, watching him from a distance. Daniel Harper, her husband, 34, mid-level manager at Baxter Tech, stood in the center of the room, tie half loosened, hair messy, eyes burning with stress. He looked nothing like the warm, caring man who once brought her flowers and whispered dreams about their future. Now his ambition had grown taller than his empathy. He climbed it like a ladder, step by step, leaving Emma behind. He clicked angrily, muttering about deadlines and incompetent coworkers. A message from his boss flashed on the screen, demanding a revised report before morning. When he finally noticed Emma, he didn't soften. "What?" he snapped. "Why are you staring?" The intensity of his voice shattered the moment. Then just as quickly, he exhaled, dropped his shoulders, and turned back to the laptop like nothing had happened. The switch in his behavior was sharp and jarring. This was the new Daniel. The night settled and the tension slowly quieted. Emma walked past him and into the kitchen, each step heavy with reflection. She remembered when Daniel used to rush home, eager to tell her stories about his day. Now he didn't even look up when she entered a room. He ignored her texts. He canceled dinners they planned weeks ahead. He talked over her whenever she tried to share something important. And worst of all, he acted irritated when she had ideas, like her thoughts were interruptions. She watched him from the doorway, wondering when the slow fading began. 2 years into their marriage, they attended a small gathering at a friend's house. Emma remembered laughing as she talked with Daniel and his coworkers. When she tried to mention one of Daniel's clients, she mispronounced the name slightly. Daniel's reaction burned in her memory. He grabbed her arm and pulled her aside, his smile still fixed for everyone else. "Do you have any idea how stupid that made me look?" he hissed, voice low and sharp. His face was red, eyes hard. Emma had never seen him like that before. He apologized later. Flowers, dinner, promises. But a seed was planted in her heart that night. A quiet seed of doubt. She should have listened to it. Back in the present, Daniel shut his laptop with a loud snap and stood to stretch. "I'm heading outside to take a call," he said, grabbing his phone. Emma nodded, pretending not to care. But she did. A lot. She watched him through the side window as he stepped onto the porch. He checked over his shoulder, making sure he couldn't see her, then raised the phone to his ear. His voice softened, softer than she had heard in months. "Hey, Chloe, I miss you too." The name hit Emma like cold steel. Chloe. She had heard it before, mentioned at dinner as, "My assistant, she's very efficient." Always in a work context, always casual. Emma had never thought much of it. Until now. Chloe. A woman he whispered to, the one who made him gentle again, but not with his wife. Emma didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She didn't storm outside demanding answers. She simply turned away. Inside her chest, something quiet snapped, not with noise, but with clarity. She saw Daniel clearly now, his ambition, his cruelty, his new habits, his wandering affection, and she saw herself clearly too. She wasn't weak for staying quiet. She wasn't scared of confrontation. She wasn't confused. She was calculating. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was preparation. Daniel came back into the house 20 minutes later, humming lightly, as if whispering to another woman was the most normal thing in the world. He walked past Emma without a glance, smelling faintly of the cologne he only wore for corporate dinners or important meetings. Emma went upstairs. She sat at her desk, breathing slow and controlled. Then she opened her laptop. The screen lit up the room. Harper's Strategic Holdings, her secret empire, her quiet power, her future weapon. The dashboard glowed brightly, numbers shifting across the screen like a storm forming in digital silence. Emma stared at it, her fingers steady, her heartbeat calm. Everything inside her settled into place. Tonight, Daniel's whisper wasn't just betrayal. It was the spark that would set everything in motion. Soon, Emma wouldn't just be hurt by his secrets. She would use her own. The printer jammed with a loud crack, spitting papers across Emma's desk like a small explosion in an otherwise quiet room. She jumped, heart racing, grabbing the documents before they scattered to the floor. Financial files, share purchase agreements, hidden account summaries, all tied to one truth. Emma Harper was far more powerful than anyone believed. She stood still, breathing hard, the intensity of the moment settling over her like a weight. For a second, it felt as if the walls themselves were whispering the secret she had carried for years. She gathered the papers, her hands steadying, and the room fell back into silence. Emma sat down, allowing her thoughts to slow. The late-night glow of the desk lamp softened the edges of her memories. She touched the stack of documents, then closed her eyes. Her story didn't begin with wealth. It began with fear. When she was 19, she lived in a small shared apartment. The rent was always late. Her family had no savings. She worked 2 jobs, day shift at a bakery, night shift at a diner. But she refused to stay trapped in struggle. She began researching natural ingredients, mixing oils and wax in her kitchen late at night. Her roommates teased her for the smell, waving their hands dramatically. She laughed with them, but inside she held on to the idea. That tiny side project became Amel Naturals, the brand that would one day change her life. Emma could still see herself at 22, sitting on the floor surrounded by boxes, labeling jars until her fingers ached. She remembered shipping orders out of borrowed storage space and sleeping on a folding cot in that same room when she was too tired to go home. The memory tightened her chest. At 26, everything shifted. A private equity firm approached her with a life-changing offer. 8 figures. She was scared to sign at first. It felt unreal. So she called a lawyer recommended by a friend. That was the first time she met Mr. Collins. Calm, sharp-eyed, in his 50s, he walked her through every line of the contract. He explained what control she would keep and what she would lose. He never talked down to her. In that small office, surrounded by legal documents she barely understood, she made her first serious strategic decision. She agreed to the sale only after negotiating one critical detail. Her continuing profit shares would flow into a structure of blind trusts and holding companies created under her birth name, Emma Lane, so that nothing would be tied publicly to whatever name she might carry in the future. That was the moment Harper Strategic Holdings was born, not as a public brand, but as the private, central account tying all those entities together behind the scenes. Later, when she married and changed her name to Emma Harper, the internal label on her laptop changed. The legal ownership did not. Mr. Collins once told her, "Your husband should know your real net worth." Emma's reply still echoed in her mind. "He doesn't notice the little things. Why would he see the big things?" And she had been right. Daniel never questioned anything. Even when she covered their bills, even when her card never declined, even when she paid the down payment on their home with her savings, he never asked where her savings came from. He only enjoyed the benefits. Present day. Emma opened her laptop, the glow revealing the sharp numbers on her screen. She clicked through several holding entities, shell funds, investment arms, and allied firms Mr. Collins and Michael had helped her set up. Each account held Baxter Tech shares. Each account moved quietly. None were directly tied to Emma Harper in any public way. Years ago, she had chosen Baxter Tech as one of many long-term investments. At the time, Daniel didn't even work there. The company had strong growth and a product line that matched her belief in innovation. Later, when Daniel joined the company, she could have told him she was a significant investor. She watched him complain about management, talk about idiot shareholders, and laugh about how no one important ever paid attention to middle managers. So she kept her silence. Now her firm controlled 47.8% of Baxter Tech. Only one more strategic purchase, already negotiated with a retiring investor, would tip the balance. She felt a quiet strength rise within her. For the first time in years, her heartbeat felt steady, clear, focused. She wasn't just surviving this marriage anymore. She was taking control of its ending. Her computer chimed with an incoming video call. She straightened her posture and clicked accept. Michael Grant, her financial advisor in his early 40s, polite, reliable, and extremely skilled at managing complex portfolios, appeared on the screen. "Evening. Emma," he said warmly, "I have the update you requested." Emma nodded. "Tell me." Michael pulled up a chart behind him. "We're at 47.8% ownership now. The last block of shares is ready for purchase. Once we execute, you'll pass 51%. He paused, letting the words settle. "One final approval from you is all we need." Emma didn't blink. She didn't breathe. This was the moment she had been preparing for, without knowing exactly when she would use it. Michael waited. "Shall we proceed?" he asked. Emma's answer came in a whisper, but it carried the weight of years. "Do it." As the call ended, Emma leaned back, her heart steady, her eyes sharp. She knew what came next. Daniel was about to invite her to a place where he thought he held all the power, without knowing she already owned the ground he stood on. The front door slammed so hard the walls shook. It was the following evening. Emma startled in the middle of sorting documents on her desk. Daniel's heavy footsteps stormed down the hallway like a warning before he even appeared. His voice came next, sharp, commanding. "Emma, get dressed. Something important came up." The intensity of his tone sliced through the quiet house. He didn't ask. He instructed, like she was an item on his to-do list. Emma stepped out of her office and saw him standing in the doorway. Tie crooked, suit half-buttoned, expression tense. His eyes scanned her comfortable clothes and he frowned. "Wear something elegant," he said. "We're going to a corporate dinner tonight. My boss wants to see, well, us." There it was, that slight hesitation before us. Emma felt the truth behind it. He didn't really want her there. He wanted what she represented, a wife who made him look stable, a wife who made him look respectable, a wife who knew when to smile and when to stay quiet. She nodded calmly. "I'll get ready." This was the first time in months Daniel had invited her to any work event. That alone sent a sharp tension through her chest, because sudden invitations from a neglectful person rarely come from care. They come from strategy. While she changed, Daniel paced downstairs. Through the vent above her closet, she could hear the nervous rhythm of his steps. He was rehearsing lines under his breath, something about possible promotion, impressing Lawson, showing we're solid at home. Emma came down wearing a simple, elegant black dress. Daniel glanced up, and for a moment, shock flickered across his face, almost as if he had forgotten how beautiful she could look when she chose to be seen. Then the moment passed. "Good," he said. "Just don't talk too much. Lawson likes things simple." The sting was quiet but sharp. On the drive, Daniel kept adjusting his tie, gripping the steering wheel tightly. He opened his phone repeatedly, angling the screen slightly away from her. But not enough. A message flashed across the top. "Chloe, see you after." Emma didn't react outwardly. She only blinked once. The words explained everything he hadn't said. The dinner wasn't just about work. It was about image, her image in front. Chloe in the background. Under the cover of her purse, she raised her own phone and took a silent screenshot of the notification. No anger, no panic, just evidence. Daniel never noticed. As they approached the venue, a large, reserved restaurant attached to a hotel, Daniel's breathing softened. His nervous tension shifted into pride. He straightened his jacket, checked his reflection in the window, and walked faster as they neared the entrance. He was excited to impress someone who wasn't his wife. Emma walked beside him quietly, observing everything. His exaggerated confidence, his sudden politeness to the restaurant staff, his loud laugh as he greeted coworkers near the entrance. Everything about him tonight felt staged. Inside, the dinner was already underway. A long table filled Daniel's department. Laughter, drinks, forced smiles. The atmosphere buzzed with people trying to impress each other more than they actually enjoyed being there. Daniel guided Emma to an empty seat near the center. "Stay close," he murmured. It sounded less like affection and more like a rule. Moments later, the boss arrived. Mr. Lawson, a tall man in his late 50s, with slicked-back hair and a sharp jawline, walked over with a drink already in hand. He was the kind of man who spoke just loud enough that others turned to listen, even when he wasn't saying anything important. His role as director of operations made him powerful and ruthless. His eyes scanned Emma like she was a resume he hadn't approved. "Ah," he said slowly, raising one eyebrow. "So this is the wife." The tone, the look, the judgment. It was clear he hadn't expected her, and maybe hadn't wanted her there either. Daniel let out a stiff laugh, unsure of how to respond. Emma simply held Mr. Lawson's gaze, calm and unreadable. Something about her composure made his eyes narrow, just slightly. He couldn't place what bothered him, the steady eye contact, the quiet confidence, or the feeling that she understood more than she was saying. But he dismissed it. He was used to wives sitting quietly at company events and fading into the background. Emma folded her hands in her lap and gave a gentle, polite smile. Inside her mind, a storm was forming, but her face stayed perfectly composed. Daniel leaned toward her and whispered, "Just follow my lead tonight." He had no idea that very soon he would lose the right to lead anything at all. The argument didn't start with a fight. It started with small jabs and lazy jokes that grew meaner as the alcohol flowed. The long dinner table buzzed with conversation, the clink of glasses, and the low hum of corporate laughter. Plates of food came and went. Bottles of wine emptied faster than they should have. Mr. Lawson kept ordering more. "Relax," he boomed. "Big week, big drinks." Daniel laughed louder than necessary each time, leaning into the performance. The more Lawson praised him, the more Daniel showed off. Emma sat quietly, hands folded, watching the scene unfold. The room smelled of roasted meat, perfume, and alcohol, all mixing with the slow stench of disrespect. 2 seats away, Chloe, Daniel's assistant, watched everything with a sly smile. She was in her late 20s, confident, ambitious, and dressed a little too boldly for a corporate dinner. Her eyes lingered on Daniel in ways a wife should never have to see. Emma noticed every detail, but she made no move. Her silence tonight was not weakness. It was strategy. At one point, someone from Daniel's team raised a glass and said loudly, "To Daniel, the only guy who can talk Lawson into anything." Laughter followed. Daniel puffed his chest. He stood up, swaying slightly, enjoying the moment like a man addicted to approval. "Emma's the real tough one," he declared, waving his glass. "She can handle anything. Right, honey?" Several faces turned toward Emma. Some looked curious, some pitying, some just drunk. Emma answered softly, "Daniel, let's just eat. You've had enough." Someone down the table cut her off with a mocking tone. "Does your wife ever stand up to you, Daniel? Or does she follow orders like a puppy?" The table erupted in laughter. Mr. Lawson leaned back, watching closely, clearly entertained. His boozy grin said he enjoyed seeing how far Daniel would go. Daniel's face changed. Something prideful and ugly twisted inside him. Instead of defending his wife, he joined the laughter. He looked around for something, anything to impress the room, to prove he was in control of everything, including her. His eyes landed on a jug at the center of the table. It was a cloudy glass pitcher filled with what had once been table water. Melted ice, squeezed lemon slices, floating mint leaves, crumbs from the breadbasket. The staff had left it there, intending to clear it later. Now it looked like dirty water. Daniel grabbed it. The room held its breath. Emma knew what was coming a second before it happened. She could have reached out. She could have said his name sharply. She could have stood up. She didn't. She wanted to see, without question, who he had become in front of people he wanted to impress. Daniel lifted the jug with a smirk, playing to his audience. "She can't even handle this," he said. Then he tipped it. Splash. The cold, murky water poured over Emma's dress, soaking the fabric, dripping onto her shoes, pooling beneath her chair. Lemon slices and mint leaves slid down the black material like stains that refused to disappear. The room exploded with laughter. Mr. Lawson slapped the table, roaring. Chloe covered her mouth. not to hide shock, but to hide a satisfied smile. Someone's phone came up, camera pointed in Emma's direction. Another person turned away, uncomfortable but too afraid to speak up in front of the boss. No one stopped it. No one said, "That's enough." Emma didn't flinch. She didn't gasp. She didn't look away. She sat perfectly still. For a moment, time slowed. The sound of the room faded, and a memory rose from deep inside her. She remembered a day years ago when they first started dating. They had volunteered to paint an old community building together. Emma accidentally spilled blue paint all over her arms and part of her shirt. Daniel had laughed gently back then. Soft, playful, kind. "Come on, Picasso," he had said, guiding her to the outdoor sink. He helped her wash the paint off, holding her hands carefully, joking about her artistic disaster. He had been tender. He had been patient. He had been loving. Where did that man go? When did he become someone who humiliated her for applause? The memory faded, swallowed by the present, by dirty water dripping from her fingertips. Emma slowly stood. The laughter quieted. People exchanged confused looks. Even Daniel blinked, unsure of what reaction he wanted from her. Emma looked at him, not with anger, but with a calm, icy clarity that made his drunken confidence falter. Then she did something that silenced the entire table. She smiled, a small, soft, unsettling smile. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was steady, quiet, controlled. This clarified everything. The words hung in the air, heavier than any shout. She picked up her purse, lifted her chin, and walked toward the exit with steady steps, dignity wrapped around her like a shield. Daniel watched her go, jaw slightly open, the alcohol in his system not strong enough to numb the unease creeping into his chest. Mr. Lawson raised an eyebrow, amused but also faintly annoyed that his entertainment had ended. Chloe smirked, thinking she had finally won. But Emma wasn't running. She wasn't breaking. She was deciding. Tonight became the moment everything inside her shifted from patience to action. And no one at that table, not even Daniel, understood what her calm meant. Not yet. As Emma stepped outside into the cool night air, one thought settled in her chest. The next thing I remove won't be water. It will be my ring. The restroom door slammed behind Emma so hard that the mirror rattled. She didn't mean to hit it that forcefully, but the shock of the moment, the dirty water, the laughter, Daniel's cold eyes, followed her like a shadow. Her breath came fast and sharp. The humiliation clung to her skin as tightly as her soaked dress. Dirty water dripped from her sleeves and hit the floor in tiny splashes. Drip, drip, drip. The sound was too loud in the cold, tiled room. She gripped the edge of the sink, her knuckles turning white. She expected to feel anger, shame, heartbreak. Instead, a strange, powerful calm settled over her. She looked up. Her reflection stared back, wet, tired, stained with murky water, but steady. Her eyes were dry, her posture firm. There were no tears, no shaking hands, no fear, only clarity. The woman looking back at her wasn't defeated. She was finished. Slowly, Emma lifted her left hand. The gold ring on her finger had once meant love, loyalty, and partnership. Now it felt like a chain she had worn long after the key was lost. She twisted it gently. The ring slid off more easily than she expected, almost like it had been ready to leave too. She placed it on the sink. The small metal band made a soft clink against the porcelain. The sound echoed through the room like the closing of a chapter. "I'm done," she whispered. The words were soft, but inside her they thundered like a breaking storm. Emma leaned forward, letting the quiet settle. Her mind drifted, not to the dirty water, but to the many moments before it. It was a year ago. She had made dinner, his favorite meal. The table was set with candles. She timed everything so he could come home early for once. But Daniel had walked in late, tired and annoyed, complaining about work and how no one respected him. Emma had gathered her courage like fragile glass. "Daniel, I think we should consider counseling," she said gently. "We keep arguing. We keep misunderstanding each other. Maybe we need help." She remembered the way he laughed. Not a loud laugh, but a sharp, mocking one. "Counseling? For what? We're fine." You're the one who overthinks everything." He kissed her forehead, not really looking at her, and walked away to watch TV. She ate dinner alone. That was the night she learned something important. He didn't want to fix things. He only wanted to ignore them. But tonight he'd gone beyond ignoring. He had made sure everyone saw what he really thought of her. And he had done it in public. Emma looked back at the ring on the sink. She felt lighter without it, freer. She grabbed a paper towel, dried her hands slowly, then dabbed her face. She wiped off the last drops of dirty water. The stains on her dress remained, just like the stains Daniel had thrown on their marriage long before tonight. Her phone buzzed in her bag. She pulled it out. One message. "Daniel, where are you? You left too fast. Come back." No apology, no concern, just entitlement. She read the words once, then calmly deleted them. Then she opened a different conversation. Mr. Collins, her lawyer, the man who handled every confidential contract, every investment, every part of her hidden life, was already marked as a favorite contact. Hours earlier, he had already started processing the final Baxter Tech purchase based on her approval. Tonight, her focus shifted. Her fingers moved without hesitation. "Emma, proceed with the board meeting and divorce prep. The acquisition is already in motion. I want everything ready by tomorrow." She hit send. She hit send. No turning back. She knew Collins would understand. Finalize the share acquisition. Prepare the legal grounds. Begin divorce paperwork. She dropped the used paper towel in the trash, smoothed her dress as best she could, and lifted her chin. When she opened the restroom door and walked out, there was no fear, no doubt, only purpose. Tonight broke something inside her, but it also freed her. The next step would change everything. Tomorrow, Daniel wouldn't be talking to a hurt wife at home. He'd be walking straight into a strategist's plan. The sound of the front door slamming shook the entire house. Daniel had returned from the dinner later that night, drunk and irritated, shouting her name as he stumbled through the hallway. "Emma, why did you leave like that? You embarrassed me." His angry footsteps echoed across the floor, growing louder as he searched for her. But Emma wasn't hiding. She was waiting. She stood in her home office with her arms crossed, calm as glass. Her heart didn't race. Her hands didn't shake. She had already taken off the ring and put it in a small drawer. She was no longer the woman who chased peace. She was the woman who prepared for war. Daniel burst into the doorway, red-faced and unsteady. "We need to talk," he barked. Emma spoke before he could continue. "Not tonight." Her tone was so steady, so cold, that Daniel blinked. He took a step back, stunned. She had never spoken to him like that. He tried again, voice raised. "You made me look bad in front of everyone." Emma simply reached forward and closed her laptop lid in a firm, final motion. The message was clear. Daniel scoffed, turned, and stormed out, slamming the bedroom door behind him. The house fell silent. Emma reopened her laptop. Now the work began. She moved with precision, as if she had been preparing for this moment long before tonight. Because she had. Every quiet suspicion, every ignored detail, every moment she swallowed a question had slowly turned into a habit of keeping proof. She pulled up her locked digital file labeled Personal Records. Inside was everything she had silently collected over the months, because Emma was the type of woman who noticed things even when people assumed she didn't. Screenshot number 1, a photo of the message from Chloe earlier that evening. "See you after." Screenshot number 2, a picture she had once taken of Daniel's tablet screen when he left it on the couch. The call log showed Chloe's name repeatedly, late at night. Folder number 1, audio recordings. She played a short clip. Daniel's voice whispered, "I'll be there soon, Chloe. She's asleep." She had recorded it months ago from the hallway when he took late-night calls in the kitchen, thinking she was upstairs. It was legal in their state to record her own home conversations he was having in her presence, even if he didn't realize she could hear. Her jaw didn't clench. Her breath didn't hitch. She kept playing the files, each one from a different night, each whispering betrayal. Then she opened another folder labeled Baxter Tech. Inside, emails Daniel had accidentally forwarded to their shared printer at home instead of the office. Copies of reports he bragged about fixing before sending to Mr. Lawson. Attachments he had once asked Emma to quickly check for spelling, which she quietly saved. She had learned to keep a copy whenever something felt off. Folder number 2. Financial irregularities expense reports that didn't match project budgets. Purchase orders Chloe had approved that led to vendors with no clear track record. Approvals Daniel signed without reading, just to impress Lawson by moving fast. Piece by piece, the documents painted a picture. Chloe wasn't just a mistress. She was involved in risky financial behavior that could ruin Daniel's position. Emma breathed slowly, letting the truth settle. Everything she suspected was real, and now she had proof, not just of betrayal as a wife, but of misconduct that mattered to Baxter Tech's future. Her phone buzzed, a message from Mr. Collins. Collins, I saw your earlier text. Acquisition is closing in the morning. Are you safe? Emma replied with one sentence. Emma, call me. Seconds later, the screen lit up with an incoming video call. She answered. Mr. Collins, always calm in his dark suit and glasses, appeared on screen with a serious expression. He looked like a man ready for strategy, not sleep. Tell me everything, he said. Emma did. She showed him the screenshots. She played the recordings. She forwarded the documents from her secure drive. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing firmer, sharper. When she finished, he said, Emma, this is enough for divorce, misconduct claims, and board-level action. Are you sure you want to proceed on all fronts? Her voice didn't waver. Yes, he nodded once. The Baxter Tech deal will finalize by tomorrow morning, he said. Once the registry updates, you'll officially hold just over 51% through Harper Strategic Holdings. That gives you the legal power to call an emergency board meeting. Emma met his gaze through the screen, her eyes calm and steady. Schedule it, she said, as soon as the ownership is confirmed. Mr. Collins leaned back slightly, stunned by her resolve, but not surprised. It will change everything, he said quietly. That's the point, she replied. The call ended. Emma closed her laptop, her heart calm and certain. Tonight, she didn't just gather evidence. She built a weapon, and she aligned it with her new majority control. Tomorrow, Daniel would walk into work thinking the company was his chance at greatness, without knowing who now sat at the top. Daniel stormed into the office the next morning with the force of a man who believed the world owed him respect. He didn't knock anything over, but his presence felt like a shove, loud, heavy, impatient. His shoes clicked hard against the polished floor. His eyes were still red from the night before, but his pride was intact. In his mind, Emma leaving the dinner early was her mistake, not his. He walked in expecting sympathy for having a difficult wife, expecting Chloe's soft attention, expecting another day where he could complain and feel important. Chloe was already at her desk, dressed sharply, typing quickly. She looked up at him with a bright smile, the kind that said she still believed she had the upper hand. Rough night, she teased softly. Daniel smirked and adjusted his tie. Nothing I can't handle. Mr. Lawson, the department head, walked by and gave Daniel a heavy pat on the back. There he is, the man of the hour, Lawson boomed. Good show last night. Daniel puffed his chest, proud of the approval. Everything seemed normal. Everything felt safe, but safety can vanish faster than pride. At 9:17 a.m., the office phones rang all at once. A synchronized chime. Unusual, disruptive. Daniel frowned. Moments later, his assistant stepped out of her cubicle, looking nervous. Mr. Harper, the board is requesting your immediate presence in the main conference room. Daniel blinked. The board? Why? I wasn't told, she replied. Chloe glanced up, confused. Do you need me to come? She asked, half rising from her chair. But Daniel's ego had already decided this was good news. A board meeting with his name on it? Maybe it was about a promotion. Maybe Lawson had put in a word. He straightened his tie again, flashed a grin at Chloe, and walked toward the conference room with confident strides. Inside the conference room, the atmosphere was nothing like he expected. Silence, cold, thick enough to choke on. Several board members sat at the long glass table. A corporate attorney and the company's internal HR director were there as well. Papers lay neatly arranged in front of each of them. No one spoke. No one smiled. And sitting at the head of the table, Emma, clean, calm, composed, her dark hair perfectly brushed, her posture flawless. A single folder sat in front of her, closed as if waiting for the right moment. Daniel stopped walking, his breath caught. His vision blurred for a second as confusion slammed into him. What are you doing here, huh? He asked, voice a little louder than he intended. Mr. Lawson leaned toward another board member and hissed under his breath. Why is she here? But the board member he whispered to didn't answer. His expression stayed professional, guarded. Emma lifted her eyes slowly and met Daniel's gaze without blinking. Good morning, Daniel, she said calmly. Please have a seat. Her tone didn't request. It commanded. Daniel looked around the table, waiting for someone else to take over. When no one did, he laughed weakly. This is some kind of joke, right? No one laughed with him. The chair of the governance committee, Mr. Hayes, cleared his throat. Sit down, Mr. Harper, he said. Daniel, trembling with confusion, dropped into the nearest chair. Emma opened the folder. Inside was a single sheet. She slid it to Mr. Hayes, who adjusted his glasses and began reading aloud. Ownership distribution update, he said. As of this morning's registry, Harper Strategic Holdings holds 51.3% of Baxter Tech. Daniel froze. No, he whispered. No, that's impossible. Emma turned another document toward the rest of the board. This one held the legal confirmation of beneficial ownership. Her birth name, Emma Lane, and her married name, Emma Harper, both appeared, tying her identity to Harper Strategic Holdings clearly. Mr. Lawson swallowed hard. You're the majority shareholder? He asked. Emma looked at him evenly. I am. The board members had already reviewed these documents earlier. They knew the numbers were real. This meeting was not about whether she owned the company. It was about what she intended to do with that power. Daniel's world cracked straight down the middle. All the times he ignored her, all the nights he whispered to Chloe, all the jokes he made about her being just a simple wife. They came crashing back like falling bricks. He tried to stand, but his legs shook. Emma, please, you can't be serious. This is my job. My career. Emma didn't raise her voice. She didn't show anger. She didn't show joy. She simply delivered her line like a verdict already sealed. Daniel, she said softly, based on the evidence of misconduct in your behavior representing this company, you're dismissed from your position, effective immediately. She nodded once to the HR director, who had a folder ready with formal termination documents. The room went still. Board members exchanged controlled, shocked looks. Chloe, standing just inside the doorway now, went pale. Daniel stared at Emma, unable to breathe. His downfall had begun, and he was the very last one to see it coming. Outside that room waited one more blow, one Emma had prepared not just as a boss, but as a woman reclaiming her life. The conference room door opened with sudden force as two security officers stepped inside. Their heavy boots hit the floor with quick, sharp steps. Everyone turned. Daniel's head jerked up, his face pale. What's happening? He stammered. The taller guard, Officer Green, spoke firmly. Mr. Harper, you need to come with us. Daniel's eyes bounced between the guards, the board, and Emma. Emma, tell them to stop. This is a misunderstanding. But Emma didn't speak. She simply closed her folder, stood, and stepped aside, giving the guards a clear path. Daniel grabbed the back of his chair like a man drowning. You can't fire me like this. I've been here for years. No one answered. The silence was a verdict. His pride cracked first. His voice followed, trembling. You can't. Emma, please. This is my life. But the guards each took an arm and guided him out. He didn't fight physically. He fought with denial, with disbelief, with ragged pleas. As they escorted him down the hallway, the office buzzed with whispers. Phones lifted discreetly, heads peered over cubicle walls. Every step Daniel took echoed with humiliation. Chloe hurried out of her office, heels clacking, eyes wide with panic. Daniel, what's happening? Why is security here? She cried. Officer Green stepped slightly in front of Daniel. Move aside, miss, he said. Chloe tried to push around him anyway. Daniel, talk to me. Daniel turned his head toward her, desperate. Chloe, just stay close. I need... But before he could finish, another voice cut through the tension. Miss Chloe Miller, please stop there. Mr. Collins, Emma's lawyer and now corporate counsel to the new majority owner, stepped forward carrying a thick envelope. Chloe froze. Collins held up the documents slightly, addressing her in a firm but professional tone. These contain evidence of financial irregularities tied to purchases you approved, he said. The company will be conducting a formal investigation. You'll be contacted by internal and external auditors. Chloe's face drained of all color. She grabbed Daniel's arm, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. You told me this wouldn't come back to me, she hissed. You said no one would find out. Daniel's mouth opened, but no words came out, because truthfully, he had never thought about consequences at all. Chloe looked at the guards, then at Collins, then at Daniel again. Her expression hardened. You're useless to me now, she snapped. She let go of his arm, turned and walked away without looking back. Daniel watched her go, stunned. He was losing everything and everyone at once. When they reached the lobby, Emma was already there, standing calmly beside Mr. Collins. Daniel's heart crumbled. Emma, please. We need to talk. We can fix this, he begged. But Collins stepped forward and handed Daniel a second stack of papers, thicker than the termination documents. Mr. Harper, he said, voice strictly professional, these are your divorce filings and supporting evidence. This is official service. Daniel took them with shaking hands. No, Emma, you don't mean this. Emma met his eyes. Her expression wasn't cruel. It was empty, like she had already let go a long time ago, and today was only the paperwork. Around them, employees had gathered near the stairs and windows. They whispered, recorded videos, watched the fall of the man who once walked through the office like he owned it. Public reckoning. Daniel felt every pair of eyes like lead on his shoulders. He stepped toward Emma, voice cracking, begging, please, don't do this. You know I love you. You know I didn't mean. Emma walked past him, like he was air, like he was a stranger asking for directions she didn't have time to give. She didn't pause. She didn't tremble. She didn't look back. But when she reached the glass doors, she finally spoke, voice soft but sharp enough to cut through the whole lobby. Love doesn't look like what you did last night, Daniel broke. He collapsed into a lobby chair, clutching the papers, his breath shaking, his eyes burning with a mixture of shame and shock. Emma stepped into the elevator with Mr. Collins beside her. The doors began to close. For the first time since meeting her, Daniel realized something devastating. She was never going to be on his side again. As the elevator doors shut, Emma said quietly to Collins, now, let's finish everything properly. The pen landed on the desk with a firm finality. Emma exhaled sharply, the sound filling the quiet office like a thunderclap. The sudden intensity of the moment made her shoulders drop with release. In front of her, the final divorce documents sat neatly stacked, each page marked with her calm, steady signature and the official court stamps. It was over. Not the memory, not every scar, but the chain that once bound her to Daniel. Several weeks had passed since the day security walked him out of Baxter Tech. In that time, lawyers had gone back and forth, financial disclosures had been made, and every piece of their shared life had been divided, signed, and sealed. Now the last signature was done. Sunlight streamed through the large office windows of her new executive floor, bathing her desk in warm gold. The brightness almost felt symbolic, like the room itself recognized her freedom. She leaned back and took in the quiet. No shouting, no humiliation, no tension pressing against her chest. For the first time in years, she felt real air reaching her lungs. Her empire, Harper's Strategic Holdings, no longer had to remain half-hidden. Her identity as the majority owner of Baxter Tech was now public and accepted inside the company. There were still legal structures and trusts for protection, but she no longer had to pretend to be just the wife. She could run her life and her company openly, without fear that someone would mistake her silence for weakness. Emma stood, walked to the window, and looked down at the city below. Workers moved in and out of buildings. Cars flowed like currents through the streets. People lived their lives with normal problems. She had survived something different, not just a bad marriage, but a slow erosion of self-worth, followed by a sharp public betrayal. And yet, she was still standing. Later that day, Emma walked into a conference room for her first larger meeting as the confirmed majority owner of Baxter Tech. Board members, department heads, HR, and legal were present. There was no mocking tone, no pity, no dismissive smirks, only attention, only respect. Emma opened the meeting with a calm voice. "We're implementing new policies," she said. "Clear anti-harassment rules, transparent reporting, training for managers. More than that, we're changing how this company treats people, not just how it counts profits." She looked directly at Mr. Lawson, who now sat quieter than usual, his earlier arrogance dulled by recent events. "No more cultures where cruelty is entertainment," she added. Heads nodded, pens scribbled. The HR director looked almost relieved. A new era began under her direction. She wasn't just removing Daniel, she was making sure the kind of environment that applauded him that night never thrived here again. Across town, Daniel sat alone in a small, dimly lit apartment. The room was modest, just a single couch, a cheap table, a flickering lamp, and cardboard boxes he hadn't bothered to unpack. His shoulders slumped. His eyes were tired and hollow. On the scratch coffee table lay a newspaper with the headline, "Former Manager Daniel Harper Terminated After Misconduct Allegations. Internal Reforms Announced." The article didn't mention his name in big letters, but it named his role and his department. Anyone who knew him could connect the dots. His phone buzzed beside him. He grabbed it quickly, hoping, just hoping, it was Chloe. Maybe she had reconsidered, but when he opened their conversation, he saw the long list of messages he had sent her. None of them read. Chloe, meanwhile, sat in a new car, wearing a new bag, laughing beside another executive from a different company, someone with more power, more influence. She opened Daniel's message thread for a split second, saw the flood of texts, rolled her eyes, and locked the phone without replying. People like Chloe didn't stay when the benefits disappeared. Daniel finally understood that. Meanwhile, Emma prepared her garden chair outside her home. The house felt different now, quieter, safer. It was evening, and a soft wind carried the scent of fresh leaves. Birds chirped, the sky glowed with muted pinks and oranges, the day folding gently into night. She sat down slowly, letting the peace settle into her bones. She wasn't thinking about revenge anymore. She wasn't thinking about Daniel. She wasn't thinking about the past. She was thinking about freedom, about the life she had regained, about the woman she had become. Emma Harper was no longer invisible, no longer overshadowed, no longer underestimated. She was whole. She closed her eyes, and the calm voice inside her whispered a truth she had earned. Sometimes the person they underestimate becomes the storm that rewrites their destiny. The scene softened. The garden grew quiet. The sky dimmed into a peaceful blue. Emma breathed in the future. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed creating it. Like, share, and comment on the lessons you've learned. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. See you in my next video.